minutes from last meeting are on the back of the agenda. So, the first item before us, it would be absolutely super to get a motion on the minutes.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
All right, the minutes of February 12th are before us. Can people take a quick scan over the minutes to see, why don't you take those words out?
That's what we make it to the agenda.
Oops. All right,
That'll remind us.
that'll remind us.
And I read it so I can talk to her.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, seeing no discussion, is there any objection to approval of the minutes? Seeing none, the minutes stand approved. Thank you. We have some quick announcements. The first one, if you have driven the Glen Highway lately, you've seen some changes. Matt, can you fill folks in on what's happening?
So this summer, we're gonna be getting phase 2 of the Highland to Artillery Road reconstruction. And so the current bridge that we're traveling going southbound will turn into a frontage road, going all the way to, the Highland exit, the dump. And they will be adding an additional bridge, which you've been seeing the piers as we've been driving by. I'd like to give you some better dates, but I don't have any specific dates. I just know we are entering phase 2, and I believe by the end of this summer, we should be in the completion phase. Yeah.
Well, won't consider complete, but we by the end of the summer.
All right. There's a lot of information available on the web if you want to sign up for updates on this project. The other thing I would like to announce is the city is looking for representatives from the community councils who are interested in what's called brownfields. And what that is any kind of lot that has potential past contamination, and they want to set standards for reclamation and future development. So we were asked to send a representative. I sent out an email to people who are on the Birchwood Council email list about it. If you have any interest at all, it's basically 3 meetings a year. The first meeting is on the 13th, down at the permit center. But it's a way, if you have any concerns about long-term environmental problems in the city, or if you have some concerns about future development and how it should go on some of the sites, you may be interested in this. And I can give you more information if you want to talk to me after the meeting. Any questions on that one? Okay.
You sent an email, Debbie, I don't understand. Recently or not?
I didn't see an email to us. I
It went
saw
to
it,
Birchwood Council.
but it only went to the council email, I think.
Oh, okay, sorry. No, it didn't send it to all members.
But she meant to.
I didn't see it, so I just thought maybe I missed it.
When she said that,
I apologize. All
too
right.
small.
Okay, if you give me an email address and a name, I will forward that whole email stream to you. They're asking for RSVPs of people who are interested. All right, next, you have 2 other announcements.
Two other announcements. The first is this thing came across my email through the Eagle River Chamber of Commerce, like a little what's going on. The person who runs a piece of career and technical education at Chugiak on culinary management, Paulette Ditzler. Their Pro Start management team took first at the state competition and has been invited to the national invitational competition, and they are looking for companion fare donations. And like, I'll probably email her because I never use my companion. I don't know how you donate a companion fare, but if anyone would like to help this team, so what this is they go, somebody from each state goes, and the management group has to present a business plan for a new, I looked this up, she didn't say it in here, a new restaurant concept. This sounds pretty cool. And those who win, the first 3 place teams, or 1st through 4th, get scholarships that they can apply to post-secondary education in culinary management. So, very good, there's that. The other thing, if anyone is eagle-eyed enough to notice the giant capitals, put this on the March agenda in the February announcement minutes, which I did not put on the March agenda, but I did look up. The Alaska Division of Forestry is offering grants for planting trees. They've got 2 different sets of grants around Arbor Day. One is if you've got some fancy forestry professional type idea for planting trees better, that's one kind of grant. And the other kind of grant is if you're gonna plant trees. If you are interested in this, you go to Alaska Division of Forestry and go to What's New, you'll find it.
Very good. All right. We have at least one assembly candidate here. Jim, you want to come up?
Yeah.
And is there another assembly candidate here? Okay, Jim, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name is Jane Allard. I'm running for the Anchorage Assembly. I live in Eagle River. I've been there for about 10 years. My husband and I have a combined military service on active duty for about just over 36 years with us both. He's retired Green Beret Special Forces. I have 2 daughters. One is 13, one is 14. One goes to Gruning and the other goes to Eagle River High School. But next year there'll be a freshman and sophomore both attending Eagle River High School. I'm a conservative. I have strong values and morals. And I'm running as a conservative. I don't teeter on my thoughts. And I'm pretty adamant of where I stand and why I stand where I do. So if you have any questions, I'm right here. Oh, I have federal experience with the U.S. State Department. I work for the Veterans Administration, also for the Social Security Administration. So I've worked with homeless veterans locally in Anchorage. So I have a lot of background and experience with a different level of politics. But I realize I need to get down and dirty with our local politics, make a difference. So.
Very good. And unfortunately, I'm not going to let a lot of questions right now because we have a full agenda. Is
Yes.
there another way that people can contact you besides
is.
right now?
Yep, you can, if you wanna write my number down, it's 907-854-5349. You can also email me at jamieallard@icloud.com. I'm all over social media right now, so you can get a hold of me and I respond.
And the
Always
date
will
of
respond.
when is the election?
The election starts, ballots are gonna be mailed out, probably 16th and 17th.
Okay.
You should have them in your mailboxes on the 18th. And I know you can also go down in certain locations, and I'll be posting on my Facebook site of where you can vote in person too. And I think the senior center is one of them here in Chugiak. So,
Well,
any questions, just let me know.
We appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
And
Yeah, thank you.
Chugiak is a
Absolutely.
little different from Eagle River, so we really like it when you come out here.
Thank
I
you.
will, I'll make it, I'll make my rounds all the time, you can count on me.
Yes.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks, appreciate your votes.
Thank
Just so
you.
know. Thank
All
you.
right. We're
We gotta
back
go
ready to
later.
reports now. And the chief typically has a real big conflict on this day because it's training day. So Chief, why don't I let you go up, because I know you have a lot to talk about, and you've got an annual report to give us too, right?
Do.
Come on up.
Thank you for recognizing that. I appreciate the opportunity to address this crowd. Tim Benningfield, Chief of your Chugiak Fire Department. First and foremost, I always appreciate this time to bring somebody with me, so I'm going to take a real brief moment to introduce you to one of our youngest members that we have right now. Madison, can I get you to stand up?
Yeah.
Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Madison. I just joined the department about 10 months ago. I joined as an ET1 and I just got my ET2. And I'm about to go to college at UAA for something medical. So,
Cool. Very good.
So Madison told you that she joined in about July. She's done 606 hours since July. That's amazing. She's one of our active members, and she just started her red card course this month. So that means she's going to be fighting those wild vampires this summer coming up. So thank you for being here, Madison. So as the chair mentioned, I have compiled the 2019 annual report, and I would love to share that with anyone. I'll rely on you if you would be interested in receiving a PDF of this. If you will let Ms. Oceana know that I can forward this to you, but I'm just going to share some real quick highlights from this so that you know what's going on. For the first time in the history of the Chugiak Fire Department, we broke the 1,000 calls threshold. We have 1,078 calls for service this year. That is amazing. One of the things that I pointed out in this report is that we are a diverse department because you are a diverse community out here. Of those 1,078 calls that we did for service, 69% of those were EMS related, and that's typical of fire departments across the country that perform EMS. What is missing there is the about 20% of calls that just don't fit fire or EMS because of the things that we do when people call. One of the things that we pride ourselves in is our willingness to deliver professional services for our community's time of need. We did 61,500 volunteer hours this year. 61,000 volunteer hours. That is amazing. Just remind everyone here that what you all pay for fire and EMS in your property taxes gives our department about $1 million, just about $1.2 million. So, using a formula put forth by the federal government that stipulates a volunteer hour to be worth about $28 an hour. If I multiply those $28 by 61,000 hours, we saved you about $1.7 million. So we saved you well over what we cost you. And I think that's pretty important for us to remember when we talk about the significance of the 111 volunteers that are here performing those services for you. Couple other things that I wanted to point out. We had a really great focus on training this year. We completed our training tower. We completed 2 projects that allow us to train in our own backyard without having to take people out of the community when they're on duty. So that was really nice. We added 9 EMTs and we added 19 firefighters this year. Now, when I say that, 19 firefighters we have certified to perform firefighting operations inside what we call an immediately dangerous to life and health atmosphere. So now we're setting somewhere around 50% of our people are firefighter certified, and about 80% of those are some level of EMS provider certified. And most of that training we have done internally. A couple other things that I wanted to mention before I wrap up, and that is we held our annual awards banquet on February the 28th. We named our Member of the Year, Firefighter of the Year, EMS Provider of the Year, and all of our awards. So I'd love for you to take a peek at this if you'd be interested in seeing those people. And then finally, we installed our new officers at that ceremony as well. So this year, I don't have to announce myself because they can't get rid of me. But as a volunteer department, as a corporation, they have an annual election, and we elect the rest of our leadership. And I will this year be assisted by Assistant Chief John Delacroze. So many of you know John lives in this community, went to high school right here in the community. As well as Assistant Chief Zach Sullivan. Zach was previously a captain and has decided to step up to Assistant Chief this year. In addition to those 2 on the command staff, we will be led by Captain Zach Overmeyer, Captain Keith Kohler, Captain Jesse Lynch, and Captain Sven Hall. All of those are outstanding people that have been around several years and have great experience. So, again, I'd like to share this with any of you who'd be interested in reading it, and I'll take. I know you said you have a full agenda, but if anybody has a quick question, I can shout out. Otherwise, thank you again.
Any questions for the chief?
Are you getting enough support for personal protective equipment for any calls you're making to people with respiratory problems?
That's a great question, and I kind of suspected this would happen. Today, the CDC has stepped back and said that the respirator masks that they were touting all along are a little bit of what they're saying is overkill. So the shortage of personal protective equipment that we were concerned with up until this point has been alleviated a little bit. They're still suggesting a certain type of mask, which most of you all have been reading in the news, the N95 respirator masks. Those are HEPA type filter. Those have been, the production of those has been slow and overwhelmed. So the CDC has said, let's use these surgical masks. They're going to give protection from the droplets. So we're not as worried about it as we were this time last week.
But you guys have enough.
Currently, we do. And as most of you know, we're not still haven't seen our first case diagnosed up here. A conference call that I was on earlier indicated that the availability of tests has been improved this week. You probably read that LabCorp and Quest Diagnostics are capable of doing tests for your providers. So if you go to your providers, they have the potential of getting you tested a little bit quicker than they did this time last week when the state health department was dictating who was going to get tested.
Thank you, Chief.
Absolutely. Anything else?
One of the many
Thank
ways
you.
Chugiak is different from Eagle River. Thank you, sir.
You keep telling everybody
Oh,
that.
I've done that for
Oh.
25 years, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. You know, we can put more chairs up here so you guys don't have to stand.
Covering awkwardly.
Here comes all the presenters.
Are you going to grab a chair? Okay, we've got just a few quick announcements. Additions. Matt, anything from FCC?
So they took an issue with the response. So we passed a resolution a while back with community notice. FCC has now taken an issue on it. They've made a committee to make a response from Federation of Community Councils. If anyone's interested in maybe submitting some time to an answer of AWU's response to the question, to the resolution, that'd be greatly appreciated. Insurance. So they tweaked one thing on the insurance. So now we do not have to be in an MOA building or be on our scheduled locations. It can be in any of the places, and if we change the date, it's still covered. Because previously we had to send our dates in to have the coverage. But other than that, nothing else to report.
I want to seize the moment because MEA is here. One of the issues in this FCC letter was adequate notification to community councils. And it sort of bubbled up for us because we were surprised with some of AWU's plans for water line that seemed to directly contradict our comprehensive plan and our understanding of how things work. Anyway, the FCC passed this resolution asking for more notification and involvement of community councils. And one of the points was community councils wanted input in long-range planning. And AWU blasted it and said no. And so it just so happens that I talked to Julie on the phone this afternoon, and she said, you know, we should sit and talk about long-range plans for transmission lines. And I said,
Oh, that'd be great. You don't even know what you're saying there.
Well, we talked about, I mean, having utility corridors already mapped out for the community
Yeah.
can help everybody make a lot of decisions.
Sharing
with
what your
eyes
guys'
wide open.
long-range comprehensive plan is?
Well,
Yeah.
that is not AWU's response at all in any shape or
It's
form.
like-
So I did share
Kick
that
dirt.
frustration with Crystal, and I think that one needs to be underlined and sent back to them.
Okay, I'll put some energy into it.
So
Yeah,
thank you.
infrastructure is important.
Yes, it is.
And it's
kind of
important
a
that everybody
thing.
has a voice.
And they're on the same page.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you, Matt. The next thing, Matt, you're up several times, road board.
The mill rate has been set. I take that back. We're flat funding this year. The mill rate is not locked down, but we will be doing the same funding from last year. So if the population goes down or up,
Assessments.
if the excuse me, if the assessed values go up or down, which they are overall going up right there, then the point is the mill rate can flux a little bit. It's gonna be the same budget that we had last year. We also set our policies and procedures. I've been preaching this one at the past couple of community councils of berms. How does everybody feel about berms? We can have a no berm policy, but we have to be willing to almost double to triple our mill rate if we want to do a no berm policy, because we'll also be bringing graders in. And also, there's another route we could go, is we go to a 72-hour plan to do plow outs and do no berms. But the feedback that everyone gave me here and all the other community councils said we want the 24-hour plow out, and we don't want to pay a higher mill rate. and we also improved our CIP as well. So now the backlog of CIP has been cleared, so it's also very important that, I think we're coming up next month, or is it gonna be, capital improvement project.
I don't know, but eventually, yes.
It should be done in May, so we should start it.
CIPs are capital, budget for Subursa, so we have 0.1 mill rate that's set for our capital projects out here. So we've just lined out what the projects are going to be. And what I was referring to is that we align our CIP projects, as we've been sending our CIP projects to Anchorage, which doesn't really work too well for Chugiak-Eagle River. So we've created a new plan to send our CIP projects directly to Subursa to prioritize them, and that's all I have.
What about the Starner Bridge, anything there?
We have not, so we had about 4 emails from multiple representatives saying they support it, but to this date, we have not heard anything affirmative of moving forward with any funding for the bridge.
There was a letter sent, for those of you who don't have the background on this, asking that money from the state be reapportioned that wasn't used, to be instead used to replace the Starner Bridge, which is the bridge over Peters Creek between Bella Vista and.
We had a project, Yosemite Drive, that we had an excess.
Behind my house.
So on Yosemite Drive, going to Eagle River High School, they saved $1.1 million with privatizing. So what we were looking to do is not asking for necessarily additional appropriated funds. We were just looking to reappropriate the funds that have been put in Yosemite Drive to Starner Bridge, so that it can be used for used for a fire truck and used for a sand truck.
How could people help on that?
Letters of support to their House representative or your Senate. If you're gonna do anything, the more representatives you write, the better, but,
So your state legislators.
yes, your state legislators, specifically your senators, that's where it's gonna.
Okay, thank you. Looks like it's you next, Lexi, Parks and Rec.
They canceled, too many people sick.
Uh-oh, all right. Anything you wanna say though? Nope,
There's just not been anything.
not going on, okay.
There was a lot going on. You wanna hear about Fur Rendezvous? I didn't think so.
Please.
She's heavily into dog budget. We did not have any advisory board meetings, so I don't have a report. Our treasurer is not here, but we've got.
277.
Okay. We have, this is as flush as this council has been.
We're gonna abscond with the fun.
Not get very far. All right, thank you. We are going to focus a little bit on community safety and public issues next meeting. Jeff is not here tonight to give the Birchwood Patrol meeting, but he will be attending next meeting, and he will bring a police officer with him.
Yeah, Danny Gill.
Jeff, do you want to say anything at all now?
Don't have a report for you guys. I've been out of state, so I just got back in the state, but I'll have a report for you guys next month, and I'll be bringing a APD officer with me.
Okay. I also want to allow you folks to introduce yourselves. I'm sorry, I didn't do that before. They are on the agenda for next meeting, and you are?
Yes, my name is Christian Hood. I'm the owner of Good Cannabis in Fairbanks. And this is Trevor Haynes. He's our general manager. And we're a vertically integrated company that has a cultivation, a manufacturing, and a retail. And we're just kind of here to get the feel for the community, to see what the options are for potentially the Eagle River area. Yeah, we're on council for next agenda, and so look forward to hearing from you guys. We also have some flyers if anyone is interested.
You might want to put the flyers on the table out there.
No flyers.
It has a lot of MEA stuff, but it's usually purchased.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for coming. With that, I think we do have an assembly report, right?
Yes,
Where are you? There you are.
back row.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Kim Collins, and I am Crystal Kennedy's aide. And she wanted to tell you about the mail-in ballot, which you've already talked about. She said to make sure you fill it in well. It's 2 pages, front and back. It's a really big one, and may require 2 stamps. If you have any questions, I have copies of all the ballots if if you'd like to see that, or you can go online and see that as well. Town Hall has the drop-off box for ballots. They have to be in by 8 p.m. on April the 6th. And, no, April the 7th. You better check online. I have the 7th, okay, the 7th then. She said, that she does not support the, alcohol tax, that's number 13. That's on the ballot again, and we voted that down before. She said to encourage everybody to use the library, that, there are lots of things that you can do at the library, including renting ebooks and taking classes. And some people don't know that, so she wanted to share that information with you all. And also to let you know that you can catch up with her on Facebook. If you have any questions, just let her know and she'd be happy to look into it for you.
Okay. Does anybody have anything that they would like Kim to carry back to Crystal? Or any questions for Crystal? Not right now. Thanks for coming, my friend. Appreciate it. With that, we will go right to the presentation. Okay, Julie, you want to lead off?
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Julie Esty. I've been coming here now, I guess, almost 6 years, checking with this community council about all kinds of stuff, including the Parks Substation. And we're here to talk about restarting the substation process. We gave you guys a heads up 2 months ago that we were going to be starting again. And it was a process that we started back 2011, 2012, and there's folks in this room that bear the scars of that process. And MEA did not get the conditional use permit it needed for that. And there were some technical reasons that it stated, but primarily we didn't get it because we didn't engage the community in a meaningful way. And so I actually started right after that, and really we took a step backwards and really focused on how we can make this happen. We have, as we were talking about, infrastructure that's critical. And just to go over what a substation is, most people, I know before I started working for MEA, a substation I would have glazed over, but now I'm a nerd about that kind of stuff. But basically, the power comes out of the power plant and goes down the big transmission lines that you see, and then it needs to be brought down to a voltage that can be distributed to your homes and businesses. And that's what a substation does. So it comes into the substation, the transformer brings the power down to a level that can then be distributed to your homes and businesses. And then even once it gets there, it needs to be brought down again by those, either that there's a transformer on top of a pole or those beautiful green boxes, another thing everybody loves about electricity. And so all of those components are critical from getting power from the power plant to your iPhone, to your freezers, to all the things that we use power for. And so each of those steps is critical. So the Parks Substation was part of the infrastructure that was built to bring power to this area. So back in 60s now, I think, Justine Parks, who lived over in Chugiak, said, we want to bring power over. So they talked to the Anchorage utilities, they said, too far. So they went and talked to MEA and said, will you guys bring power to us? And the folks at the time did. And MEA is a cooperative, so we all own MEA. I'm a member. 95% of our employees are members. And so they made a decision to invest in this area and bring infrastructure here. So the Parks Substation was part of that build out. And when we built it, it was in the middle of a field. And of course, the community has grown up, as you all know, around it. And so now it's time to upgrade that substation. It's reached the end of its useful life. There's parts in there we can't even get replacements for. And we need to bring the substation up to current electrical standards that can meet the needs. And so the substation feeds in this area. The substation has the transformers, and then it sends power through what they call feeders, and one feeder will go this way, one feeder will go this way. So the feeders snake through here. They serve 2,000 residents. They serve 3 Bears. They cross the street and serve Chugiak Elementary School. The substation also does the senior center. So it serves some pretty critical loads, and we want to make sure that this community is served well. The other thing a substation does is it backs up the ones close by. So if one substation goes down for some reason, we can pick up the load from another substation. So Parks was actually one of the critical substations during the earthquake. When the Pipple substation in downtown Eagle River went down, we were able to carry some of that load from here. And so we back each other up and make sure that there's enough redundancy in the system. So that's just kind of the basics of the substation, why we need to do this. So again, yeah.
Question, so are you gonna give your full presentation, or can I ask questions as
Jump
you're
on
going?
in, no, this is a
Okay.
discussion, so.
So, I don't know when you have a substation, what you measure it by, but I mean, do you have an amp rating for a substation, what the power that it's distributing it?
Phone a friend, John. So let me, this is a great time to introduce my team. So with us today, we have a few folks. One is Haley, and so Haley has been the project manager of this. She started a couple years ago. Again, nothing to do with the previous efforts. And then we have John Sinclair in the back, and John is the director of engineering for MEA, so he's in charge of all things engineering, what the system looks like. And then we have Juan Lee with us, and Juan, unfortunately, is not an employee of MEA, although we wish she was, but she is, she's the permitting guru, so she's making sure that we follow all the rules to get this through that permitting process, make sure we dot all the i's and cross the t's, and is our expert about the municipality. So phone a friend on either Haley or John, talking about amps.
What's the current amp service right now?
So it's, on the high side, you have more amps. On the high side,
And what is the high side? The high side connected up to the transmission
Yeah, so the
line?
transmission level is higher voltage, lower amps. And on the low side, which is lower voltage, you'll have higher amps. So it's rated, if you want to know the rating, is
Lower
2,000.
side.
On the low side, so I think that bus work is 1,200 amps, is what the rating is.
Currently?
Oh, no, that is 5, so that is much, the current one is, I believe, what is that, rated 5 MVA? And we're going to a 20 MVA.
So you're almost doubling what your capacity would be?
Yes, we will have more capacity, correct. And in addition to that, we'll build in redundancy. Right now it's a tap off, so we lose several substations in a row right now if there's a fault on the transmission. The transmissions are taller, so it's less likely, but when that happens, or in an earthquake, you can lose multiple substations. With this new design, you will not, for an N-1 tree. You get multiple trees, it's bad. But one tree into the line, actually with this ring bus, the lights will stay on. So that you get not only more reliability, but also additional capacity.
Is this substation the only one in the Chugiak area, or do you have any in Peters Creek?
The closest one is the Reed substation, and
Is
that
the what?
it's called the Reed substation, and that's really close to our power plant,
Include now.
down in Eklutna. And
Okay,
then
so you got Eagle River, Pebblefield, you got the Parks, and then you got Eklutna.
yeah, there's Pipple. There's a couple in Eagle River.
There's Briggs.
Briggs and Johnson. There's one kind of behind Walmart where the hill
Yeah,
goes down.
yeah.
And then we also have one
But out here specific,
correct.
we
Well,
just got the one you're talking about.
that's all we have, correct.
Yes.
And we do
Okay,
have
that's
another
good.
one permitted for the powder reserve, and that was another conversation we had with the community. The powder reserve area is that area down near Terrace Lane where Eklutna
Yeah,
is
yeah,
developing.
yeah.
And so we have, if that builds out, we will need additional capacity, and so we went through a process with the community to identify a space and pre-permit so people could make choices with eyes wide open. So that is permitted but not built, and it will not be built unless the capacity dictates that it's necessary. Other questions?
Oh, there'll be a bunch, go.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm sorry that I missed the last meeting. I hear it was spirited, which is good. I mean, this is something that deserves a very thorough scrub, especially because we are starting from a hole. We know that we did not build trust in the past, and we have a new team, and we're really working hard to make sure that your voices are heard in this. So what we did, one of the big things that we heard from the community is, we don't want it here. Can it go anywhere else? And so we did a search. We hired, electrically, we had to stay within a 1.5 mile-ish diameter from the current substation. We said, give us all the vacant land. So they went and marked all the vacant land there. We did drive-bys of like, okay, this one was like this, that wasn't gonna work. But there was a couple that were even closer to big communities. And so we picked out, in addition to the existing substation, two additional spots, and I got that right here. So sorry, in Lexi. So here's the existing substation. There was, and so the other thing, I guess, if I didn't say it very well before, is the substation has to exist on the existing transmission lines. Otherwise, you've got to drag the transmission lines with you. So we were not only looking for enough vacant land, but land that was along the transmission line so that, or could be easily taken, otherwise we were gonna have to be dragging those big, huge transmission lines through neighborhoods, and nobody wants that. So we picked out a few properties and did a pretty thorough assessment, not only on the cost for it to be there, but the community impact. So we looked at things like, how much impact would the actual substation have. But in moving a substation, it's kind of like moving your heart. Like, you can move it down here and it'll still probably pump, but you gotta connect it into all the important parts, otherwise it does no good. And so that's the same with the substation. You have to, if you move it, you have to connect all those feeders I was talking about back to it. And so that's really where the impact was. It was less in the sites and more that we had to bring the feeders down here. So we had to bring 4 feeders into these spots. And that's where you had 30-foot easements going through long lines of property. So we looked at the different sites. Again, there was one here. Both were actually owned by Kootenai Inc. This was along the highway. It seemed great. It was something, not that, it was only viewed by the highway. And then there was this one. This is like right near Chugiak Elementary. It's one kind of in the back. And it was a steep lot. You can see that's where kind of Peters Creek goes, or is that Peters Creek that goes through there?
Mm-hmm.
And so it goes down steep. There's a lot of cars down there. Dead cars. But we looked there, and then DOT basically said, in addition to the footprint being tough, DOT said, we have an easement across there, you're not touching it. Yeah, and so we said, okay, hands off. So we did the assessment and found that the community impact would be significantly more in any other place. Yeah, sorry, there was a question here, Karen.
I just wondered if it mattered how wet that piece of land was. Like, do you want to put your substation on a swamp? Or
ideally, we do not want to put our substation on
is that the
water
piece you're
and
looking at?
electricity.
Looks like, I happen to know that has a pond on it.
Which one, this one?
That one, yeah.
Yeah. So, there was some high ground on it when I drove around and looked at all of them. So there was some high ground on it, but yes, there was a big well pump there, or wellhead or something. So anyways, because of the community impact, we decided to go back to the existing site because any other place we went was going to be more impact to the community. Wait, I told Karen I'd talk to her and then, yes.
Could you hold up your thing again?
Yeah.
Where is the post office on that?
So,
Right there. Did you look at that property between the post office and the senior center?
On the other side of the highway, utility.
Again, you have to drag that 4 lines. So the problem is, no matter where they put it, those 4 lines have to come through everything. 4 new sets of lines.
Although it does go right through that one on property line. The lines are.
And
No,
then-
it's
if
not
you
this
trans-
line that she's talking about. That's one line, but the other
That's
thing
a
you have to do
transmission line.
is the 4 additional lines have to be dragged too.
The 4 feeders
The
have
feeder
to
line.
come.
But it's doable. See, you
But
know
it's
my
very
big concern
doable.
is that
It's
this
doable.
is a residential area. That's my greatest concern.
Right.
Is to
And
try to keep it out of people's neighborhood.
no,
But
exactly.
What they're saying is those 4 additional lines now have to be dragged from your residential neighborhood through everybody else's residential neighborhood to connect to any of those spots.
But it's just a line.
Yeah, but that's what everybody's
It's a
complaining about is the
30
current line.
It's a
Is that-
30-foot, distribution lines are typically 30 feet easement, so the power line goes here and it's 15 feet on either side, and so, yeah, so we'd be clearing that 30 feet through multiple properties. So yeah,
But are
it's-
those easements already built into those properties?
No, because there's not existing line running through them. So
Or anything?
if they move that, there's nothing existing that's there.
Have you looked into the Circle West property?
Right next to
Right
Three Bears.
on McKinley View, where you could go right down McKinley View next to Three Bears, and that property's been for sale, it's zoned commercial. And then there's a residential.
Is that the one with that had the previous gas station on it?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah,
Right here.
yeah, I think
I
that
go to
wasn't,
sleep.
so that wasn't part of this existing one, because it wasn't available. It wasn't available at the time that, that we were doing this assessment, so it wasn't part of that
Yeah.
initial assessment. So I'm gonna go to Matt, because he had a question.
Okay, so these lots were looked at based off of these were available lots.
These were what was open, available, yes.
So my question is, if you guys are purchasing Kevin's lot right there, that means you guys are open to purchasing a lot. So if there was a better spot that was more advantageous, couldn't you approach a property owner to potentially purchase that property?
Yes, I mean, that would be a possibility, but I think, John, did you wanna?
I did, so in addition to not, there's physical limitations on a substation, not just, not all 4 acres or 2 acres are the same. Like if you have a very narrow but long one, it won't work. It can't be a triangle that's 2 acres, because we're putting in a ring bus. Ring means circle. So physically, it actually looks like a circle. So you actually have to have the right layout. A rectangle works great, to make it work. So there's physical limitations as well. So it's not just size, about 2 acres, but really we need like a rectangle or a square. Just because of the electrical, like how it's configured, if that makes sense.
And you require 2 acres?
Ish.
The current site's 2.5 acres, right?
Yeah.
So looking at that map, the gas station one's under 2 acres.
Right, and that's what you run into, is you start getting the setbacks and the physical layout. You have to have so much space for your electrical. It's gotta be a square or rectangle, really.
How big is the Circle S property if you include the residential that you could purchase?
That's about 2.5 acres, but again, the back part of the Circle S property goes down a steep hill.
Yeah, the
So
back
what you're looking at from the road is all you're looking at as far as level ground, according to the engineer here.
Yeah, because the McNamara's did point that property out when it came for sale, and we didn't do the thorough investigation.
You did
We
look at
this
that?
with all of- We looked at just kind of,
Yeah.
oh, is this an option? And, it just, like you said, like the steepness down the back, and, yeah, so.
It's less than 2 acres.
It wasn't part of this thorough, we
Analysis.
actually went through and gave points for buffer impact, view impacts, clearing impacts, so, that wasn't part of that, but we did go by and, like, all right, well, yeah, we'll take a look at that.
Well, I guess I'd like you to take a more serious look at it.
Well,
Yes,
but we've eliminated it. It's not big enough. They've just said that. It was an easy check off because it's not big enough.
Well, the Circle S itself
Okay.
isn't, but there are residences.
Right
that
now,
could
it's
be
just
purchased.
questions, okay? Not debate.
And I think, please continue to ask questions, because this is an important conversation for the community, and we're all here to do what's in the best interest of the community. We all come with different lenses, right? We've got the folks that live right next door, we've got people who are impacted by the electrical service, we've got us who, as a co-op with certificated CPCN with the state, are mandated to provide reliable power to this area. So we're all coming with different lenses, and I think all of those voices can be heard for the right solution. So, yeah, Ron.
I know that Kevin had an independent real estate entity come in and assess the property after the next door property was clear cut and made ugly. They said that his property had been decreased in value by $70,000. My guess is, I'm just surmising, MEA came in, offered him the full price before the back view was trashed, and maybe even sweetened it to be able to get that property from him. What about coming in and making this guy an offer he couldn't turn down? And putting it over here next to Three Bears, where it's already in a commercial area, and preserving the quality of this, and also not. I mean, Debbie worked so hard to get this area defined and stabilized as a place where people could come out. It's not quite, you couldn't quite call it rural.
Rural community,
But
yes.
it's
Rural lifestyle.
not suburban either. Big lots, peace and quiet, no industry, no commercial. That would take it over into a commercial zone, and you wouldn't have all this angst from all of us who
Well, and that's
have
what
to.
we heard, right? We heard, and so we actually did walk that property with the communication tower on it, the one right behind Three Bears. Again, because it drops off, and because the communication tower was there, we needed to bring the transmission lines that way. It was just not a big enough footprint.
We're not talking behind here.
Oh,
Right next
I'm not
to it.
talking about behind, I'm
Right
talking
next
about
to it.
Circle S.
Oh, the
Circle
residence.
S,
There's two residences
the
there.
Circle S residence, plus this residence, there's a huge flat area there, just way bigger than you've got there, and it's zoned commercial. except for I sold this, but you bought Kevin's, you could buy that, and I just can't.
Is there any
I
way
feel-
We did spend significant time looking at the different alternatives and found that this particular route had the best site with the least impact to the community. And so this is the one that we are moving forward with the CUP for now. Because, one, it's now 7 years later, and the substation is in serious need of repair. And so we need to make sure that those repairs are made. We've spent significant investment of resources, of member resources, looking at all of these alternatives for Birchwood and making sure that at that point in time, this was the best option that we had for the community. And we do know that there are absolutely impacted landowners. There's also a good bit of vacant land around the substation as well. And so this is what we've decided to move forward with based on all of those.
I think your word, this is what we've decided, is the key one. And I think that it's proven itself over time. MEA is gonna do what MEA is gonna do. And I feel like when they first came around and deceived us all, everyone will say that Don Tanner represented as this tiny little upgrade, and it's gone about a measured 1,800% instead of a tiny little upgrade.
And I do
so
apologize
see,
for that. And so,
I
but we
wonder
have
why-
spent over the last 6 years, we've been.
I
with the
haven't
community
heard from you
council
guys
a lot.
One,
What's
not once.
Well, we've been to the community
One
council
at a time.
often. We've had public meetings on this.
You ever
we've been
stop by a
talking
property
about-
owner?
Of,
I'm right on the corner of that. I've never talked to a single person from MEA about that.
I
Which
watched the Birchwood Community Council agenda, this is the first time I've seen it on the
It's the
agenda. I
first
might be
time it's
wrong.
been on
Wait a
the
minute,
agenda.
wait a minute. Could you point out your property, sir, so she knows where you are?
I'm right next to him, right straight.
Are you right here?
Yep,
You're this property right here.
yep,
And you guys are which property?
right there.
And I'm right next to
You're this
him.
one,
We're here.
and you're here.
Here's Kevin.
Oh, there's mine.
We're up from
And
Kevin.
you guys are here?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I'm right next to you.
Okay.
Julie? I have a
Yes.
question. Is there any way that this can be downsized at all? I mean, this is like, if people wanted to look at it, what it's really like is if you have a 25,000 square foot home, it's an average size home in a lot of places. This is not upgrading to a 5,000 square foot home, a 10,000 square foot home. It's upgrading to a 45,000 square foot home. That's the equivalence of the size and scope of this project.
well, and I can either let Haley or John speak to the design of the substation, and why it needs to be the design it is, if you guys want to.
Yeah, but you guys did, you're saying you checked all the other places and you put a lot of time and money, but you really didn't. He just named 2 or 3. You guys already decided what you wanted to do. Everything's best for you, but you really didn't have any community impact for land property owners because we never got to talk to you.
Okay, sir, I really hear your frustration. Right now, though, we're doing questions, and we will get into debate, I promise. So right now, limit it to questions, okay?
Yes, can it be
All right.
downsized at all?
Questions.
I already had a question. Can it
Oh.
all be downsized at all?
John or Haley,
Does
do you
it
guys want
have
to
to
take?
be this massive?
So. Go up here and do pictures.
I guess my question would be, could you move forward with the presentation of what's gonna be done so that then we can
Yes.
see?
Yeah, we're gonna.
Then we'll have.
She's really trying to get there.
I think that would then answer her question or give the ability to.
So, we were here last month just to kind of do an introductory, meeting, and we got some feedback. So we did a Title 21 analysis on the landscaping. This is what Title 21 minimum requirements, and this is what matches what was, the visual that was provided on the flyer. But, at last month's meeting, one of the feedback that we got was to increase landscaping. So we have increased it, so it'll look a little bit different than what was on the postcard. So right now it is about 15 to 20 feet of landscaping on the west and the north boundaries, and then we've increased to 30 feet on the east and the south. And then the natural vegetation according to, the Title 21 requires 4,500 square feet, be remained, and we are retaining actually 10,000 here on the south side. 122 trees will be planted and 488 shrubs will be planted with this upgraded landscape design.
How big are the trees to start?
So they will be 8 feet, and then the shrubs will be between 18 to 36 inches.
What is the current square footage of the property that's there now?
It's on the handout, but it's about 2 point.
Yeah, so it's currently just under 2 acres. We're replatting to get a little more space for drainage and landscaping and buffering. So it's gonna be 2 1/4 acre is gonna be the proposed project development site.
Okay, the question was asked, can it be a smaller substation?
This is 1,800% bigger. Can it be maybe like 900% bigger, or it's not that
Do
massive?
you need that size of substation?
The equipment, or the question that is about the equipment or
So,
The equipment, not the lot.
right, so all this squiggles here is the equipment.
Mhm.
And what it is a ring bus, so it's longer, but basically you have a circle, and that provides the reliability. So the question on whether or not it can be smaller, size in this case will provide the reliability not just for this area, but for the Eagle River area, the Klutna, all of that area, because what happens in a ring is you can have a fault on one side and it'll open 2 breakers here and basically isolate that fault, and no one down on either side will even notice it because it isolates it right here and it isolates it back at EGS. So you have a transmission fault, so the transmission line goes out, but we have feeds coming in from other directions to Eagle River and to the Klutna, so those stations would stay on the line. So what would now cause an outage throughout this whole section, including Eagle River, Chugiak, the Klutna, would not once this goes in. So it is a reliability increase. That's why that type of ring bus, the distance that we need electrically to install that is what you see here. We really don't want to make it bigger. Bigger means money. I mean, there's copper underneath this that is not cheap to put in. So in addition to that, we've got to level it, we've got to grade it, we've got to drain it. So ideally, we want it as small as possible as well. So smaller means less money. So anytime we can go smaller, we do, but we need to be able to maintain it, and we need the electrical distance that's required by code to make sure we're safe. So there is basically enough to get vehicles in and out, larger sized vehicles, because our toys are rather heavy. And so you need to be able to get cranes in there, you need to be able to get low boys in there. So there is an edge not only for electrical, but also for maintenance purposes. So for the reliability that would really help this whole area, it needs to be this size. If I can make it smaller, it would save us money too. So to answer your question, this needs to be the size it is to do that type of reliability.
She has a question back there.
Aside from the total footprint of the whole thing, including your driving around space and everything, how much larger is the footprint of just the equipment going to be? Like, how much is it gonna expand from the existing?
So the existing is actually where the landscaping and part of this the driveway area here. So existing is probably this, and so we're increasing.
So you're pretty much just relocating it, but is it expanding in
It'll
size?
it'll be larger. Yeah.
Show
it's
them
not-
By
elevation.
50% or?
Yeah, pull the next one. Where's your elevation shot? It's not the big change is the elevation. That's what everybody's upset
So
about.
this actually shows, this is the substation existing.
And then that's the new one.
This is what it looked like,
And on the height, which this, you know, when the trees are mature, 10 to 15 years, right, ish, it'll be better. But this height really is 20 feet, I believe, shorter than the existing transmission that's adjacent to it that's currently feeding it. So it is 20 feet lower. We also have, recently we've gotten lightning strikes that have caused a decent amount of outages. That's new. Usually we didn't put in lightning protection. On this sub we are. which adds a bonus 10 feet to the top. It's called a shield wire, and it helps protect the sub from lightning, just because we started to see an increase in lightning. So it could be 60 feet if we didn't put that in, but due to recent activity, we've just gotten a lot more lightning strikes, so it is a little bit taller. But again, it's 20 feet, 20 to 30 feet, right?
In that area, the transmission line is 90 to 97 feet tall.
So it's about 20 to 30 feet, shorter than the existing transmission line.
So it's
we
still
do
gonna
try
be
to go
75 feet
lower.
tall.
It is gonna be, yeah, the
75 feet tall.
That's just the floor, there's 4 poles. The equipment, I mean, you can see, this is gonna be about 51, and then the equipment here, I mean,
It's all below the 12-foot fence.
Yeah.
or just, I mean, just above, maybe like 1 or 2 feet above the
And then, wait, she still has the floor. Go ahead, Mandy.
Sorry. I've heard also from people that there's gonna be like security lighting on top of these ginormous poles. Is that gonna be the case? Am I gonna have lights glimmering in my face?
No, so in this one, if I go back to this one, they actually, it shows where the lighting will be, and they're all faced down.
Towards the equipment?
Or at the equipment, yes. So the light poles will be 30 feet tall, and we are, oh, sorry.
Keep going.
Oh,
She has the floor.
we're required to limit our foot candles at the boundary lines. So when it's in, we have 2 stages of lighting. When it's in the security stages, which is just for us to be able to enter the gate and get to the enclosure. That and maintenance lighting, which is when we need to operate on the actual equipment. Either type of lighting, it won't be, it'll be 0.1 foot candles at the boundary lines.
So it's very little light normally, and then if there's something going on, then we'd have to turn on like the other lights.
Right,
So
but it's
lighting's
just
gonna be
the-
on when you're there working, but not when you're not?
So we do have security lighting, and that is on photocell, but only 2 lights will be on for security lighting, and that'll just be wood and stark. And that is only for us to be able to get from the gate into the enclosure, and that's it.
But they're on 30-foot poles?
Yes, but they're face down or at the equipment.
Are they LED like these at the
Yes.
ski dress?
Yes.
They're very directional. That's the good news or bad news, depending on how you look at it. With LED, they're very directional. So at the edge of the property, you're going to have very little light pollution. It's actually really dark.
Do you know what kind of lumens they put out?
We'd have to look that up. I don't remember
Are you
that,
gonna be
but
attending another meeting here soon?
When
Could
did
you
the
bring
Chamber
one
of
and turn it on for me?
So it is similar to a street light. So very angled though, because the little circle that they show you with foot candles, it just stops on the backside. There is no light on the back. Like you can't walk very well on the backside of it. It all goes straight. That is the good thing. The other subs I put in, it's really dark at the perimeter. I don't think you'll get much light pollution outside of that area. The LEDs are great at that. They really are. They are very good at being directional. The old high pressure sodium ones were not. They would scatter a lot more. So we got actually a decent amount of complaints about the high pressure sodium. These ones, since we started putting them in, very little. I mean, when we talk like this, they're like, "Whoa, there's gonna be lights. That's bad." And then once they see it go in, they're like, "Oh, that's so dark."
Well, we don't have streetlights out here, so it's a big deal.
Oh.
Yeah,
It's a big
yeah,
deal.
it is.
Okay,
Can I add some
Are you
more to the
done?
question?
sure, go
So
ahead.
you had a question, and I just want to answer, but the lot coverage for this by code allows us to cover the lot up to 30%, but the structure, which is the foundation for the equipment, only takes up 6% of the lot. So hopefully that answers part of your question about how big the equipment is.
Is there a footprint size to that you know?
In terms of square footage?
Yes.
Somebody do 6% of 2.2 acres. I got a millennial that can do that.
Okay. Another question, and then we'd really like to let them get through the presentation. Wait, why don't you go ahead, you haven't said anything yet.
I have 2 questions, just very quickly. First, is there noise pollution, like decibels?
So we are upgrading the transformer. It is currently a 10 MVA, but it's fairly old. It's like 1974. And then the new one, will be 20 MEA, however, at the boundary lines again, it'll be 60 decibels, which, is about the same level as a normal conversation.
My other question is, I see tamarack. Are those the trees that you would be planting on that edge?
So there's about 9 tamarack in our whole, out of the 122 trees, there's only 9 tamarack ones here.
And there's nothing else in that area. So in the wintertime, when they lose their leaves, you're gonna be able to see more through that area then. Because tamaracks lose their leaves, like, okay, so I'm just wondering.
We like conifers.
I believe there is, in this design, it's about 50.
It has to do with the
A landscape
drainage.
expert.
Yeah, so we have a landscape architect who recommended the tree species, working with our electrical engineer. Roots for certain trees are a big issue for electrical equipment, as well as drainage was a really big deal to you guys last time for a very good reason. All the drainage is going to be on site. We'll give you a chance to look at this rendering. This is the engineered landscape plan with the color so that you can see where all the landscaping is. But the gray around here is a drainage swale that goes around the perimeter. And so these tamaracks are here for reasons because they don't have the roots that clog up the electrical equipment, the swale, and make the drainage not work the way it's supposed to. By code, if it doesn't stay on site, we cannot get this permitted, so. Hopefully that helps. We do like conifers. There is a mix of species. There's lodgepole pines. Trying to stay away from the white spruce because there's a beetle kill spruce issue. I know I tried to go to State Park last summer and it was closed in the valley because of beetle killed spruce. So they're very cognizant of what species will survive. So survivability, diversity of species is really important. The mix of shrubs and different conifers and deciduous trees. Trying to make the site not just buffer landscaping to meet code, going beyond that because we want it to blend into the community as much as possible.
Okay. Another question in the back.
Oh no, I just have your square footage answer for what the structure itself is going to be. The structure is only going to take up 2,613 square feet. So as you were saying before about the average size of a house.
Okay, I think it's misleading because if you drive up there, it looks like there's concrete footings everywhere.
So, those concrete footings we are taking out.
Those are from the old
So
house.
these are gonna be
Yeah.
they're gonna be piles.
Not those, some
There's
of
a bunch
those
that were
we
just
put
put in.
Yeah.
They just went in.
They just went in.
These ones, so due to, increased setbacks with the new Title 21 code that we have now and the old one, we are not able to use the concrete, footings that are there now, so we will be putting in,
Piles?
piles.
Okay.
So those are gonna be removed.
Yes.
Good. Questions? Go ahead.
Once you start this project, from the day you start to break ground to level and stuff to completion, what's your time estimate? How long am I gonna hear construction going on?
So this year we're doing permitting and next year it will be construction, so 2021.
Okay.
What's
What's the process? Is it gonna take you 30 days, 150 days, do you know?
Right now, I think our schedule is from April to, I think, November, December. But it'll slow down in the winter months.
And as far as construction, so that's from breaking ground to energize. What you guys will see, because commissioning, there's a bunch of guys running around in there, but no construction.
Okay.
So that's programming the computers, basically. That's a month to 2 months. So that 8 months, you will probably hear construction for maybe 6, give or take. Around there.
Okay. All right. Another question, then I'm hoping they can get through their presentation. Go ahead.
I have a question about why are we even here tonight? Why are we doing this? It's pretty well settled. You guys are gonna do what you're gonna do, and our commentary doesn't make any difference whatsoever. To me, it's not a question of, we need it, yeah, we need it. You need the size, yeah, you need the size. The question is, are you gonna put it in a residential area? If a court of law, the judge in a court of law said, thou shalt not, you guys would find another place. You would find another place. And so I'm wondering why we're even here. there was so much lying that went on before the last goat rope a few years ago, to get us who were neighbors to kind of sign on to it. I'll bet you that no one here but Debbie and me knows what the old site looked like. It was so unobtrusive, people lived right in its front yard. I wouldn't want to live there myself, but they did. And what is up and running now is even an upgrade over that. But it was very quiet. Certainly, we moved in around the area knowing it was there, but it was so subtle. And now we're slammed with this. I am just wondering why you would continue to be an affront to those of us that don't want it. Everyone on Steffi's, everyone on White Birch, everyone to the south, to a person that we have gone around and questioned is dead set against it. Why would you continue to do that when you could move, say, over to the property by Circle S, where I mentioned you could buy that person out in the back, and you'd have a huge flat area, bigger than this, in a commercial zone. Why are we even here?
If I could interject, there is a chance they still may have to do that, because requires a conditional use permit, which basically means it's not a done deal just because they want to do it.
Right.
There has to be a hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission, and as you know, that happened before, and they said, no way.
No way.
All right, so the first thing I asked when they called about this is, well, what's different this time? Because we opposed this so strongly last time, that now they're making some changes, and they've investigated, and they're coming with a new plan. So that's perfectly within their rights to do. But it's not a done deal that they're gonna do this. It's up to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And certainly, anybody can go to that meeting and testify too. All we're hoping to do with this council is come up with some list of our concerns and issues and our position, so we can forward that to the Planning and Zoning Commission. That's the goal of this meeting.
And our goal is to get as much input as we can to, if it has to be here, then how can we make it the least intrusive?
Because I have trust issues with MEA, based on last time, where is the documentation on the footprint size? Because my understanding is the current one is 6% of an acre, which is 2,500 square feet. So I don't know how this one can be that much bigger and still be 2,500 square feet.
Do you know the size of the current substation?
Yes.
Footprint?
Oh, not the footprint, but the lot size is just under 2 acres.
Yeah, no, her concern was the footprint.
Yeah, the footprint size of the original.
Is that something we can get back
Something
to?
with the
Yeah,
documentation. I want the
Yeah.
documentation, I'm sorry, I don't take people's word for it anymore.
Yeah,
We've been burned.
We've got an engineered site plan that we can
Okay.
get the calculations from, yeah.
Okay, another question, and then maybe they can continue.
Okay. She had asked, and you said the answer was 60 decibels that the noise would be once this is completed.
Right.
What is it currently?
I am not sure,
So, 60, if I remember the sound, we do a sound study, that's part of the conditional use. The 60 assumed no fence, so the good news is it'll be quieter than that. That was the sound report, they didn't actually have a
60
fence
decibels at the fence?
at the property line.
At the property line?
At the property
but
line,
they did not include the,
because there
the
was no
noise
fence.
cancellation that will, the
That's-
fence will take in.
The 12-foot fence.
That's
Right.
still
So
pretty
it may be
annoying.
less than 60, but we didn't include the fencing barrier.
And they assumed, I believe, 72 for the deep.
74.
That's still gonna be pretty annoying.
So 74 is what they assumed, but in, I believe our transformer spec, and I don't have them all memorized, but it's 65, so it's actually much lower than what they assumed, which means everything gets better, not worse. So it'll be, and the existing transformer, because they're old, older transformers are noisier. They just,
So
as
if
they
we take a
age,
reading here at the fence
That's
right
the
now,
question. Exactly, that's.
Yeah.
of what it is right now.
What is it right now?
And we take a reading at the fence and have it done, and then you guys are gonna guarantee it's gonna be less than that.
So it would be 60 at the, property line.
Right,
know,
in the
we'll take
future,
it at
but
the
what is
property
it
line.
right now?
Wait,
If you go out with a
wait,
reader
wait.
right now, what is it? Do you know?
He doesn't
So-
know.
I don't have that information, but we might, so let me check in with
I
our
just, in
environmental
comparison to
engineer.
what it is, I'd like
Yeah.
to.
Download the app and go stick your phone next to the property
Okay,
line.
all right.
There we go.
Yep.
I'm fairly confident it'll be lower because as they get older, they get so much louder. The older
Okay, but you're
transformers
saying that
are
it would,
so
but that's
loud.
what, but
on your phone.
Okay,
But you
guys,
can measure, yeah.
questions only now, please, go ahead, questions.
On the question of noise, there's another aspect of that, and that's vibration. What about humming? I cannot abide of my house to hum. What about humming and vibrations, and is that measurable, and what would that be?
So transformers do vibrate. The good news again is as they age, they get worse. So the newer they are, the less they vibrate, just like the less noise they have. And the newer transformers are much more efficient. Kind of like cars, they just get more and more efficient. So they vibrate very, very little. So we're going in the right direction with purchasing a newer unit as opposed to older units. Older units, they do vibrate. I had a substation where we replaced the transformer because it was so loud, because it vibrated, and it was 40 years old-ish, give or take. Put in a brand new one, vibration went away, noise level was way down. So the newer ones really are quieter, they're more efficient, they're better because they have less losses. So I would be shocked if when we put in the new one, even though it's twice the size, it'll probably be significantly less as far as noise and as far as vibration, just because it's a newer unit.
Is there a way to scientifically figure that out so that we actually know what it is now versus what it possibly would be if this goes through?
So the decibels, we can definitely.
No,
know.
not decibels, vibrations. Is there a way to measure that based on the new
Probably.
equipment? I'd like that kind of information. That must be available somehow, somewhere.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's measurable now. I mean, the vibration, it's a,
Okay,
I
so
can look
it's
into it,
noted
but.
as
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's noted in it as a question.
Yeah, we'll
Thank you.
follow up.
All right, yeah, go ahead.
Does this substation exist somewhere else in Anchorage at this time that a person could go look at that one that exists already and just kind of look
Where?
at it?
Right by my house.
Where?
Hayne on O'Malley. Do you guys know where the Greek church is? On O'Malley in Anchorage? O'Malley and
Oh, it's the same
Lagodas?
design?
Yep.
Okay, I
I
used to
can-
live right by it.
Yeah.
O'Malley and what?
O'Malley and Lake Otis,
And it
so
has
right
the-
by the
and the
Greek
same height.
church. It's this, and it actually has a lower fence, right? John,
Yes.
it's not 12 feet. This fence
but it's
is
got
gonna
the
be
same
12 feet.
height, poles
Yeah,
on it?
poles. I drive by it every day, and it's the same design with the different poles, different lengths, closer to the residential.
So it's got 75-foot poles on it?
70 feet towards O'Malley. And it's got a fence, and it doesn't even have landscaping facing O'Malley, it's just got the fence.
But
This
it's
is gonna-
basically this,
It's this, but not as good landscaping, yes. But
There's
it is
less
this, yeah.
landscaping, there is landscaping.
Yeah.
so we can drive there and look, all right.
Yes, you can.
How long ago was
Additional
that one
question.
put in?
John was actually a part of that
Yes.
project when he worked for Chugiak-Eagle.
What year did that one get put in?
Do you remember what year, John? Was it 2016?
Okay.
I just remember looking at the
Yep, I
case. It's
believe
pretty
it is,
new.
2016.
Yeah. So the landscaping hasn't grown up. There is no landscaping on the front.
And
it's
the
just
lighting
fence.
there, when you drive by it, I mean, it's getting lighter now, so it'd be hard to tell. But if you drive by it during the night, you'll see it's very dark.
It is very dark, and O'Malley doesn't have lighting, so it's a dark.
And it'll be
It's-
very similar
It's
to
rural
that.
residential.
Okay, Kim,
If Aquidnet, or I'm sorry, if Powder Ridge has already been identified as a location for future growth, since this project in this location will actually be infrastructure, electrical infrastructure, for a much bigger project than just local, from what you're telling us, could you not go ahead and build the Powder Ridge location and keep this one small?
Or smaller anyway than this.
So transmission is different than distribution. So when I say it goes out, I was talking specifically the transmission, thus the ring bus, so that's transmission level. Unfortunately, the distribution level, we have to be a lot closer to who we serve. And so because Powder Ridge is further away, I mean, it isn't super, but it's further away feeder wise, so distribution wise, it is too far away to really pull in that load based on what they were telling us load was, from this sub. So at the distribution level, we can't serve that area from this, depending on the load. I mean, if it's a little load, yes, but if they're gonna really build out like they were, that's why we got that permit there, is because we can't serve that load at the size that they were saying with our feeders, distribution level, the little ones. We can't, electrically we can't. So that's why this one's here and that's why that one is gonna go over there, if they ever build it.
okay. Well, Julie, you wanna continue on your presentation?
Well, I'll give the floor to Haley and Juan, because I know, they might have more project
We have a
details.
couple more things to talk about.
So another feedback that we got at last meeting was to have a taller fence. So the National Electric Safety Code requires us to have a 10-foot fence, but we upped it to 12 feet, and it'll be a Trex wood-like fence. It's basically a solid wall. In 2013, the previous design, it was a 10-foot chain link fence with just the green privacy slats. So this will be,
an upgrade.
Right.
Upgrade,
Yeah, and I mean, in comparison, these trees here are showing at 8 feet, so I mean, it's another 4 feet. So it's pretty tall, and it hides most of the electrical equipment and the switchgear and stuff. So then the other thing that has changed from 2013 to the current design is the pole heights. So in the 2013, which is on the handout, it was the tallest poles were 60 feet tall, and then closer to the residential area towards the west was 46 feet tall. We are increasing that from what John was saying about the lightning shield wire going on top. So it'll be 70 feet tall, these 4 structures here, and then closer to the residential area to the west will be 51 feet. And so the transmission line is currently 200 feet away from these structures. And those structures, like we said before, are about 90 to 97 feet tall, so these will be about 20 feet shorter than the existing transmission line.
But aren't you putting those up on some fill that's already been brought in? Like how many feet of fill or gravel are you gonna put in for a pad to put those on, which raises them even more?
This should be at that height.
At grade, so at the ground level.
Ground level.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, anything else you want to say?
That for my part, I want to have a little bit more to talk about drainage, but.
Yeah. So I'm in charge of the land use permitting, and some of you were here last day. Lexi took excellent notes on the permitting requirements for this, so if you get a chance to grab the agenda and read her meeting notes, if you don't catch all the hopefully not too technical things I'm going to say. So the project has to go through 3 permitting processes. Debbie mentioned the conditional use. The electrical substations are permitted in residential zoning districts because they serve the residential and some of the businesses and commercial churches, schools, like we mentioned before. So they are permitted in residential zoning districts. And Lexi is awesome, she caught that in her meeting notes. But they're permitted through conditional use. So they're not a by right use. We can't just go and build this. And that's part of the reason we're here too. We want to make sure that you guys know what's happening in terms of design, in terms of impacts, what the code, what the municipality requires for us to have this project, and even be able to talk about it. If it was prohibited, we would not be here. We would be in a different zoning district that would permit a utility substation. Julie gave a great history, overview, background of the substation being there for over 47 years in the field and things growing up around it. And I'm pretty sure the electrical substation providing power, has a lot to do with letting the community grow and develop into the community you have today. So with that, Haley showed the minimum requirements that the conditional use requires for the landscaping. The conditional use requires a site plan, so that's what we have here. The drainage I talked about a little bit earlier. Last time, the old project did not take care of the drainage. It had drainage going off-site. That is not allowed in today's code. Not sure if it was allowed back then either, but it's not good development. You wouldn't want your neighbors to drain onto your property, and this is what is being required of the project. The drainage swales I talked about are on here. They are the perimeter of the project, as well as Title 21 requires minimum 15 feet. MEA, last time we heard, you guys would like more landscaping, and so there's going to be 30. We're keeping the natural vegetation here, 30 in the front from Steffes Street, 15 to 20 here, just to make sure we're buffered all the way around, not just for aesthetics, but for views, erosion, drainage, retention, all of that. I want to do this for a second. But if you didn't already, there is a handout here because we heard you the last time, what did you do last time, and what are you doing this time? So we have a good table that shows what the previous project was, what this project is, how it's different, how it's better, how it's meeting code, and how MEA is not going to construction, not going for any building permits until the conditional use is approved. One other thing, we are under new Title 21 with this project. The old project was under old Title 21. It will be measured on its own merits because it is a different project than what was before. I wasn't around working on this project before in 2013, so I'm not super familiar with how relaxed maybe the code was or what was a requirement, but I do know that I'm here to make sure that we check all our I's and dot I's and cross T's.
Check boxes.
Exactly, and we talked to the planning department, the municipal departments, project management, engineering. We talked to Mark Littlefield with Subursa, making sure that what are the additional requirements off-site that are gonna be required for this project. We need to know now so we can include them in the design. And I feel like we've talked about some of these things last time, but we've come back and are being responsive to what we heard Lexi and other Birchwood community members say last time. So, when you guys will, so we talked about the fence, but quickly, the fence in the zoning district is 6 feet is what's permitted. Anything over that is gonna be a design variance at the Urban Design Commission. So we have to get a fence variance to do the 12 feet, which is what we heard you guys want last time. We were proposing 10 feet because that's what the electrical code is required for utility substations for the safety and security of the perimeter so that people aren't climbing in and going into an energized electrical substation. So 12 feet is what we heard. We hope that's so what everybody wants because I think 12 feet does a really good job of screening the electrical equipment. So we submitted to the planning department, that's another requirement, so three processes, but design variance, it's a public hearing, and that is in addition to the public hearing for the conditional use. Let me see, there's a good visual here of what that would look like. Yeah, so because we're different than the code, even though we're meeting electrical code.
You want a question now?
Yeah, does anyone have a question?
Yeah, I do.
Debbie, did you have a question first?
Well, I do. My big concern is setbacks.
Yes.
And the front of the lot,
Right here.
I think you've got I feel some personal culpability about the new code, because we should have thought more about this than we did. So, the front on R6 is a 50-foot. Back, though, I don't understand why you've got more footage, more buffering on the area that doesn't need it, because there's that big swale and then there's the utility setback. There's not houses here. There is houses here, and there's a real house there, and there's houses over here. So why the heck have the extra there? Put it up here and really make that buffer bigger, that setback bigger. I can't
It's an
believe
excellent
anybody can
question.
ever live in that house right beside that. I mean, how close is that?
The house
20 feet to the property line. From the fence to the edge of the deck is 74 feet.
Whose house is that? Are you?
That's
here?
Kevin's house.
Kevin McNamara.
Oh, okay. Isn't that the guy who sold the property? You guys, don't you own that property now?
It's in the process.
In process, yes.
Oh, okay.
So
are you
I wanna
gonna
answer
demolish
Debbie's-
that house?
Sorry?
Are you gonna knock that house down then if you
No,
purchase the
they're
property?
gonna let somebody buy it.
We're basically gonna sell.
I know last
Oh,
time.
you're just gonna
Let her
retake,
answer, okay?
you're gonna take part of the lot line and then resell the property, is that what?
Correct.
Okay.
So I'll just answer Debbie's question really quick. That was an excellent question, Debbie, and there's a topographic reason for not having the big buffer there, like you said. So we're exceeding Title 20 requirements. The topography of the site, it drains, and this sounds weird, but it goes this way, so it feels like it's
We
one.
know.
Yeah, and it drains, and there's a low spot over here, right? So this can't move there, and we can't add more buffering because
Yeah, but she's asking you
this
to
is low
shift it.
point.
She's asking you to shift it this way.
Shift the equipment this way. There,
Shift the whole
The
thing.
whole thing down.
yeah, so there, do we have the truck on here?
There's a mountain on the
Yes.
south side.
There is.
So it's gonna cost you a little bit more.
A lot.
Okay.
Well, okay, I'm concerned about, the buffer may be great for drainage, or the vegetation may be great for drainage, but it's not too great for the neighbors that way. The other thing is, really talk about the west side. That's the back of the lot. It should be more than that. It should be 50 feet. And it's,
So, this goes back to why I'm asking the question I was asking. Last time it was brought up, if you're buying that property, why don't you level that house and center the whole thing off and move it over and down to the far side, so it's the farthest away from all the houses? That's your solution. Put that back up. Or you're, no,
It actually
not
gets
that
closer
far.
to the houses than that.
No, it's not.
Is it this one?
I didn't study that, it's that one. So if you go here, right, if you take that and you level it, and then this right here is a road right away that doesn't line up with another road right away that you could get access to, and bump this whole site this way. This house is over here on this corner, this house is on this corner, so you're shifting it away from everything else and giving yourself a heck of a lot more buffer.
The way I see it, knowing, you guys know the neighborhood a lot better, but I think it's actually bringing that would bring it closer to the houses, because this site isn't, there's no development there, this is the hill and the easement, this is a vacant lot, or an undeveloped lot right now, and so if we're bringing it in here,
I
we're
can't see
bringing it,
Julie.
oh, sorry, then we'd be bringing it, like, this is undeveloped lot, this
But
is,
there-
so then we'd be bringing it in
But
closer
you
to.
need to shift this way. That's what they're trying to say. This
Shift
right
it
here
south.
needs to be shifted, shifted south, well,
No
it would be
thanks, my
south.
property's there.
Yeah, you're this one, aren't you?
No,
No, they're this one.
You're this one here, but if you shift this way, yeah, but you're still giving everybody else more buffer. And by the way, they're right, when you look at this is 50, oops, sorry, this is 50 feet, trying to sell that house, just bite your bullet, level the house, right? That gives you a lot more buffer, gives you better drainage, because I don't have to do the drainage here, I can narrow this and bring the drainage over here now. You have a lot more space that you can give yourself in here, right? Stop trying to save some money and say, we're talking 100,000 out of them. You losing 150,000 out of $1 million project. We tell you to move it somewhere, $10 million project, we tell you to move it somewhere else, right? Which they have the ability to do. It's gonna cost you millions more rather than losing 150,000. So, well, you've already bought the house, cut your loss over selling a house, you're probably not gonna get more than 150.
okay, well, anyway.
So use it as a buffer, that's the.
It just, the back buffer is what now? 20 feet, 25 feet? What's your
No,
back,
it's-
what's your west side buffer right now?
About, I think it should be 20, but between the fence and the adjusted property
Why is it
line
only
is 30
20?
feet.
It's,
It
where's the
should be
amendment,
50,
Taryn?
shouldn't it?
So it's, hi, I'm Taryn, I'm a planner with R&M. I'm going to introduce myself before I start talking. So the way that your property lines are set, so front, side, and rear boundaries, it depends on the right-of-way. And so for here, there's a right-of-way on Steffes Street, and then there's actually a dedicated right-of-way that runs south.
McKinley Ave.
McKinley Avenue that has been undeveloped, but it's dedicated right-of-way to the south of both the existing substation property and the McNamara's.
Yeah.
So that is,
That's a right away, right?
That's,
correct.
that's
So-
ludicrous. I'm sorry.
It will never be
It
built.
will
Debbie.
never, it's, yeah,
Right.
it's the middle of the
Right.
utilities.
Right, but it's still dedicated that the city
Okay.
has this. That means it won't, it can't be used as part of the site.
Right.
It's public right of way.
But regardless of the legalese, the specific language, front and back to almost anybody, is Steffes Street and the McNamara's house is the back. So I think the back needs to be 50 feet, personally, strongly think that, not the 25 or 30 feet that you've got there. And I can't imagine anybody buying that house.
no.
Anyway, sorry.
It's good
I
feedback.
said I was going to give a question.
We said
I
this
got
last
on
time, that we
speech.
didn't see
I
any changes.
apologize.
This is
Right,
something-
so MEA is,
12 foot fence.
it's not, yeah.
We got 2 feet of the fence.
So this is the McNamara's property now, this is their backyard, this is what they see now. This is after construction, the 12-foot fence, early vegetation, 1 to 2 years after it's planted. And that's, we're recommending Colorado blue spruce, and then this is when it's fully grown. We got asked this question, so
I
we
know,
brought.
I've been on the couch.
Yeah.
Very good.
We brought this for Debbie, because she had that question last time, we're like, what will it look like once this
And that's
is-
from not their deck, that's from their.
That's from the
That's
ground,
from
and this picture was taken in
precisely.
August of 2019 when we did the field surveying, the land surveying, so it's pretty recent. But that's the visualization of what it will be once it's built.
Okay,
Okay.
sorry. I do have a question. There was a question in the back, too.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there was.
Go ahead.
Well, my first question was, where is the water going from your drainage contours? Is it going on to the street?
No,
Or is it going down into that buffer zone?
So there's drainage actually off-site, which the site actually has to collect. So everything's draining this way. There's a drainage swale all around the perimeter. No water can come on the site. You cannot have it go here, here. We have to deal with off-site drainage that's not the site, but will be collected in the swale. There is a low
And
point
then
right here.
after you collect it, what are you doing with it?
It infiltrates into the ground.
All right.
The site also has crushed rock,
So
and
it's.
that is very, very
So what's that gonna do to the
pervious.
wells in the local area?
What's that?
What about the wells at our houses?
Those wells are actually mapped. I think land surveying mapped those. We have that data. I don't have it with me.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, yeah.
Go ahead.
definitely come back.
Yeah.
Well, if they
Okay.
put something in the ground. then-
Sorry, did you get your question answered?
Well, they're saying it's draining into the ground there through their gravels, but what is preventing any accidental spills from going down and
Contamination.
polluting the groundwater?
So I don't have that info, but I think we
So for
have.
the transformer, which will be, here, we have secondary containment, so if there's any spill, it should, be able to handle all the oil that is actually in the transformer.
The transformer.
Should.
It will, by code, they have to handle twice.
Right, we won't get this permitted or built if it doesn't.
Okay, go ahead, you wanna finish your.
I think that's it for the permitting, so, design variance, public hearing in front of the Urban Design Commission, and then Planning Zoning Commission. Matt asked a good question last time, we have not submitted an application for the conditional use because we haven't talked to you guys, we haven't shown you design. This is today's meeting to show you all of that, to get your feedback. This is not the only time or the last time you can provide feedback. You will get a copy of the application once it's submitted to the planning department. They will route it for community council comments. You can comment as an individual, as a council, like Debbie talked about. We will be at the Chamber of Commerce in April 3rd. We're on the agenda as the main item, really, the main item to talk about the project.
And not just the project, we're talking about MEA,
Yes,
including this
exactly.
project.
Yes, so.
Okay.
Permitting
Matt? All right, oh, go. Permitting
Permitting
question?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Are you required to notice us other than just the notice on the telephone pole?
Yes.
To send out the
Yes.
cards like we got?
Yes,
Make sure everybody
excellent
knows about
question.
all the meetings?
Yes,
And they
excellent
want
question,
above
Kat.
and
So,
board on that.
yeah, so, you got, most of you got postcards if you lived within 3,000 feet of the project. Title 21 requires 500 feet of noticing, but you're in a very large lot rural area, so we would have only got like 15 of you maybe. So MEA went above and beyond, did 3,000 feet of the project area. We mounted, the project mounted 447 people, whether or not you lived in the area. Some people own property but live in Texas, so they got a postcard, as well as a person that lives on that property, say they're renting it, for example. All the businesses got cards. I think we only got 21 back that had bad addresses. What we do is we do a follow-up to make sure that we can get a hold of those people. Once we submit the application, the conditional use to the planning department, they will do another notice. Hey, there's a notice of a public hearing, the application's been submitted. Here's a copy of the case online that you can
Is
print
that
off.
500 feet or is that 1,000 feet?
That is 500 feet, yeah. And then we are also required to post, so you'll see a couple signs once the applications are submitted. And we're ready to go. Planning department checked off everything that is required and we've submitted it. There will be postings around the site so that anyone who drives by can call the planning department with questions about the project or provide feedback.
So you're saying planning will do the 500 feet, but what about MEA? Will you guys send out more postcards like you just did so that everybody knows about all the meetings coming up? I think that would be a friendly thing to do.
Yeah, we could definitely do that.
So you guys collected emails today too, right?
Yeah, we have all your emails.
We will also put this on our Birchwood Council agenda announcements in the future. All right, timing, I wanna just, this is a housekeeping issue. We have to close at 9 o'clock. We are kicked out of this building. My hope would be that we could sort of get a general opinion of where we are, and that we list areas of concern, and that we could potentially write a resolution, and it's gonna, right now, gonna have to be voted on at our next meeting, because I don't think we've got time to do it tonight. So, just think about that, and go ahead, sir.
So, I have an issue with the decibels, but I also have a question about, you have a third-party inspector that's coming through this, you say it's gonna be 60 decibels. You have a guideline that you claim that you're gonna try to hit.
The municipality does it by complaint. All the noise complaints are, if somebody, if you think it's too loud, you call zoning inspection and they will come out, or you can measure it yourself with an app on your phone, somebody mentioned that, and put it in. It's like a zoning infraction.
Okay, so
So they're
there's
not
not
gonna-
gonna be any third-party inspector there
It
to
on-
specify.
it goes on the
Okay, yeah,
complaint.
we're at 60 decibels, because this gentleman is right there on the corner of that. We're right next to this gentleman. You claim that 60 decibels is about what I'm speaking now. I could be at my garage and talking on the phone, or he could be at his garage and talking on the phone, and I can hear his whole conversation, and our property line is 165 feet. So it's gonna be approximately 200 feet away.
Okay, so that's a real strong concern of yours, is the sound.
Well, of course, yes. I mean, the
Okay.
lighting, yes, I don't wanna see it at night.
Okay.
But,
Your house
what
is
I'm
out
getting
there.
at, is, okay, it's supposed to be at 60 decibels. All right, that's what you're claiming, 60 decibels. I don't feel is acceptable. It's my personal opinion.
Okay.
But what if it's at 120 once you're all said and done?
Then they get fined.
The municipality, I believe, correct me.
And I'm just throwing numbers out there. I'm not trying.
Fine doesn't mean.
Right, that doesn't make.
You know what I mean?
I'm suffering from this, but you get to take it in the shorts. But we're gonna get passed on down the line because you're paying a fine. Now you're raising our bills.
You're gonna do the resolution right now. I was gonna say, no.
That's why I announced that. What I'm trying to do is identify issues. Sound is one, setback is one.
Third-party inspector, so that's not even gonna be there. It's one of my biggest concerns.
Well, I don't know exactly what you mean, third-party inspector.
Quality control.
Someone that doesn't
Someone
work
that
for
actually
MEA
doesn't.
that's
Yeah.
making sure
Joe
it's built
Schmo
to what they
company.
said it is.
They have guidelines of what they're gonna do. Joe Schmo company comes in and says, yes, this is all the requirements. We met all their requirements. This is what we're shooting for.
That's what
Rather
it
than
says,
just say,
zoning
hey,
planning.
because a land use permit, I can say, hey, I'm gonna build this, but I build something else, and I turn it into the muni, and not unless everybody around us complains.
I hear you.
That
The
use permit.
city doesn't have anybody like that does that.
But is MEA going to hire somebody to do that? That's what I'm asking.
So, kind of to answer that, when we go, so we buy these, and we go to the plant, and they have to meet our spec, and if they don't, then we reject it. And noise is a big deal because it means it's inefficient. Not only do we not meet code, but we're losing out because it's actually heating instead of providing power to you guys. So we actually burn more fuel if it's not efficient. So it's in our best interest, because there's a lot of money over the 30 to 50 years this transformer's in use. It's in our best interest to make sure it's super efficient and to make sure it's super quiet. The quiet, I mean, we care about that, but the efficiency we really care about, but they go hand in hand. You can't have a really efficient transformer that's noisy. The two just don't, electrically, physically, they don't work. So we have requirements, and we will reject the transformer at the factory if it doesn't meet our noise requirements. And they do a noise test. They do 5 feet around, and they have a bunch of microphones. So it is tested at the factory. So that's when it gets tested. That's when we factory accept it.
And back to my concern of the third-party inspector, it's up to your expectations, but everybody else in the room, especially this gentleman over here, because he's right there next to it. There's less than 20 feet.
Okay. All right. What I've got to do, because of time here, is really squash us now. So go ahead.
What's the total cost of the project, and what's the impact on the consumers? of the co-op members.
I believe when you look at those,
11 million.
It's 11, it's in your chart,
yeah,
your option chart with the pictures on it, with the approved options,
Here's the first one you
I
guys
think it was
have.
11.3
right there.
million.
11 for what?
11.33.
Okay, and how's that spread out to all the MEA customers on their monthly bill? I mean, we're already paying for the equipment power plant, so what's this gonna do to my bill?
So on this one, I can't speak to equipment, but usually what happens is we have so much debt, and someone can jump in like Julie if I'm lying, but you have so much debt that you retire each year, we pay off. And then you bring on so much more debt for capital projects like this. So we have an equity plan, and there's cash flow in, cash flow out. So we're retiring the debt. So your net, because of this, we have a capital plan that has so many millions each year. This is in that capital plan. So we retired the debt that we owed, and now we're bringing on new debt, and we actually are retiring more than we're bringing on. Because our equity's going up. So we're retiring more than we're bringing on. So this is part of that plan. So you're, as a result of just this specifically, because we're retiring that debt, it won't have an effect on rates. That's not real. I mean, the debt is net zero. Yeah, it'll net no additional. If that
Okay,
makes
guys,
sense.
we've got 15 minutes, and what I'm gonna suggest, I've got lighting is an issue, noise is an issue, vibration is an issue, drainage is an issue, and the west setback is an issue. So what I'm proposing is, I'll try to draft some really rough resolution, and we will vote on each one of those at our next meeting to see if we want to say, this is a big issue for us planning and zoning, this must be addressed one way or the other. That's my proposal to you. Does
Would
that
it
sound
help if we
reasonable?
respond to some of these
Sure,
questions
of course
in
we will.
writing and send it to you, and then that way you have additional, because some of the information pieces we don't have with us.
How about location?
Well, I
You're
don't know
going
how-
down the avenue of agreeing to this site and its use right there.
With
There's a
conditions.
completely another route that might be,
Might be alternate location, okay, we will vote on that too, all right, how's that?
Ugly is an issue.
Pardon me?
Ugly is an issue. This shouldn't be called a
Aesthetics.
footprint, it's an ugly print.
Well, I don't know how to wait right there.
Well, it's just part of the lighting and all that.
Community aesthetics.
Okay. Yes.
I'd like to make a very strong recommendation. Most people are visual learners, and so I would like to see a 3D, it doesn't have to be real complicated like an architectural design, but I would recommend that MEA, in good faith, to show what they're really doing, do a 3D design as the current substation is, and another 3D design as they propose it to be on a scale of 1-to-1, so we can see apples to apples as far as size. It's just too hard for most people to fathom the size and scope of this project on a 2D piece of paper.
Okay, thank you. Again, I apologize on time, I felt we could do this, we came close, but not quite. At this point, I would like to put this matter on the very beginning of next month's agenda, and again, with apologies. We've got just a few brief announcements. Do we have another candidate here?
Yes.
Come on,
Again,
and introduce yourself.
have you already spoken?
No, but
Hi, I'm Stephanie Jeffers. I am running for Assembly. Jamie, I switched places. I went to Eagle River first, and she came over here. I'm actually from Chugiak. I grew up at, my dad was pastor at First Baptist Church of Birchwood for 20 years, so grew up at North Peters Creek, and now I'm across the street at Bear Lake. But running for Assembly, I have a couple pieces of paper here if you want to know where I stand on things, or if you have questions. Mostly I just want someone who can join the team. The Assembly's worked really hard to address some of the problems in Anchorage and has done a pretty good job working together. I was voting for Fred Dyson to run again and he didn't, so I stepped up and said, let's do this, because I think they deserve another teammate that is willing to work with them. I'm happy to answer questions later. I don't want to take too much time.
Do it now. Well,
Yeah,
give a way they can reach you. Is
Yes.
there a web
Yes.
page or?
Jeffers for Alaska, you can go to Facebook at jeffersforalaska.com, www.jeffersforalaska.com. I'm on Instagram, and I've got a couple things that I can hand you if you want to at the end. I've got questions for people about right-of-ways, because I am interested in trying to help you guys as much as possible. This isn't in my backyard, so I see everyone else in Chugiak-Eagle River saying, hey, it's power, we need this. But we don't look at it from my side of the street. So it's nice to hear from you guys that this is something that you're really passionate about. And even though a whole lot of other people are saying, hey, we just want our power, it's affecting you. So I'd love to hear from you guys if it's about assembly stuff or this.
Thank you. We love Assembly people coming to our meetings.
I just want to say that I really appreciate that Stephanie is stepping up to give us a choice in this election. So anyway, thanks, Stephanie.
All right, you want to say anything?
Sure. I'm Ken McCarty. I'm running for State House, Chugiak-Eagle River. And some of this stuff is a big process right now, so you can go to McCartyforAlaska.com and you can read all about that on the website, and you'll hear more later on. And let me just mention one quick thing. I'm also president of the Birchwood Airport Association. Question that was brought up about the chemicals in the well. She's not here earlier. So we looked into a number of things. We're not seeing that something of that chemical was ever used for, but we'll discuss that. There's a board meeting coming up, and if you have $700, we'll do a test. And
Thank you.
come back.
District number?
13.
All right, thank you very much. There are two reasons coming up before the Assembly, and, well, I think they're both the first one is, we had a presentation, remember, for the folks from the railroad that were rezoning the 5 tracks, and we didn't have any concerns. Right now, it is coming before Kinsey.
It's a planning, not zoning, right? It's the
The
replanning.
Municipal Planning and Zoning Commission will consider Troy Davis's request for a rezone. They're going from a PLI to an R2. Oh, wait, this is the other one. I'm doing well, I'm doing well. That's Carroll Creek. Okay, this one is going to the planning board. Lexi is entirely correct. It's the property in Powder Ridge. They want to go from 5 large tracks to other 5 tracks. Remember, they talked about this before, we had no issue. But if you care about this, you need to get your comments into the planning board ASAP.
That's the railroad.
That's the railroad one. The second one is right by Fire Lake Rec Center and Fire Lake Elementary School, and it's the Carroll Creek property, it's by the Mac Center. And that is that's a petition by Troy Davis to put in 153 units. They want to have an adult senior housing, right? 1 big unit and a bunch of duplexes. The concern previously has been density. It's also been transportation access because of inadequacy on the road and access into the school off of the highway. This one, we can make comments, and the comments are due 3/16. 3/16.
What's the case number on the railroad?
Here, I have copies of all the paperwork on those, so if you're interested in that, come up here and I will give them to you at a time where I'm not distracted. Thank you very much, MEA. With that.
We're out there too if they have.
Okay, MEA's hanging around.
We're gonna be doing yoga out there. Yeah.
Thank you. And the intent is to vote on this at next meeting, and I'm sorry we couldn't do it tonight, but that's how it goes. All right, with that, oh gosh, you got 10 minutes.
That's good.
Is there anything else we need to talk about right now? Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thanks. Karen.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. Don't forget to share. Facebook squeals on you if you don't share. Have yourselves a great evening.
I thought you did that.